And you're now tuned into A Reasonable Conversation on Nusound Radio 92 FM. I'm Prerna, and in the studio with me is Satish.
Good morning.
And Vivek.
Morning, everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about political correctness and causing offence. Isn't that a great topic to talk about?
It is. So, to our listeners, welcome to the show. And remember, this is a reasonable conversation. And so we fearlessly try and use reason to explore all sorts of ideas. Some of them might be a little bit close to the edge. And I think today, working with offence and giving and receiving offence and political correctness, I think we're going to touch the edge of a few subjects. So, welcome to the show. And Vivek?
Yeah, it should be a really good, interesting show. If you've got any views, if you've got anything that comes to mind when we talk about offence, something that offends you, any reasons why you think you might get offended, feel free to text us on 07961 387 787 or join the conversation on 0208 472 9292.
Okay, wonderful. Right, so just to start the ball rolling, I'm going to toss a curved ball in and let's see whether we can play with this idea for a few moments. People get offended. And so in that process of getting offended, there is somebody who is giving offence and someone who is feeling offence. Now, I feel that the suggestion I'm going to throw out to you there is that it's up to the person who is feeling offended whether they want to be offended or not, that they have a choice. And that the person who is giving offence, they are actually the weaker part of the relationship. Because if you try and give somebody offence and the person refuses to feel offended at all, then what you've tried has failed. So the whole dialogue between two people giving and receiving offence, I would say the power is in the person who is being offended. What do you guys think?
I think that's true, but then for that to work, everyone would have to be mentally really, really strong. Kind of like, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me sort of a person. And I don't think everyone's like that, and I think they'd always think, why should that person be allowed to offend me in the first place? By saying something offensive, shouldn't they be stopped and be politically correct?
Yeah, well, I'd say that the person giving offence,
there's
something wrong with what they're doing as well, isn't there? You don't feel like, he's okay, he's allowed to say whatever he wants, but if you feel offended, it's your fault. Shame on, it's...
Fair points. But then how do you get it to change, right? If you've got a person who is giving offence and he is continuously unsuccessful because you just choose not to be offended, sooner or later, isn't he going to give up and feel, hang on a minute, this is not working? Or, if you are going to feel offended, he's going to carry on. Well, it gives him power, doesn't it?
No, that is true. But if you're not taking offence, how long is it going to go on for? You don't know. Some people just like giving offence regardless of what reaction, right?
Yeah.
Just to play devil's advocate, maybe it's better to give offence back, even bigger and, worse offence.
So that's stooping to their level. So,
oh, not even stooping. Going lower than they're going just to get them to stop.
Okay, maybe this is going back a long, long time, but I remember when I was at school, and Prerna, what you said about sticks and stones was something we used to hear all the time. So going back to the late 70s, or even just a little bit earlier than the 70s, not wanting to give too much away, I was at a school, right, and in this school it was about 600-700 kids, and most of the kids were Irish Catholic and white. Okay, so in this school there were only 3 of us who were Indians, and there was one Chinese guy and one African, and between us we were the focal point of everybody's every racist comment you could imagine. Every week there was some sort of an assault, or some sort of an attack, or some sort of an insult, or some sort of an offence. I grew up with people actually using the words that these days you think twice about even saying, being called a gollywog, being called a nigger, being called all of those, being called a pecky, etc., etc. All of these words were thrown at us, and it took me a bit of time to understand. And I remember coming home and speaking to my parents, and they used to say, well, actually, whatever they say is their problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's up to you to be strong enough and decide, is it going to hurt you or not? Are you going to feel bad about it? Are you going to let it ruin your day? And so this was the common sort of advice. And when I actually realised that the power was in my hands in terms of how I felt was up to me and not up to them, it changed dramatically.
Do you think people stopped saying these things once they noticed it didn't have an impact?
I think kids are different, right? Kids, they enjoy playing the games, right?
Things.
Yeah, kids are in playgrounds. They do things in playgrounds, and they say things in playgrounds that are probably illegal for grown-up adults. But I think kids are different, and kids do stop. If they're not being entertained, if they don't find something amusing, if something's not working, then kids, I think, give up. and the relationship can enter into a different space. What do you think?
So are you saying that adults won't give up?
Well, I'm just reminded of a famous Punjabi saying about kutte di poosh, as they say, they're the tail of a dog. Where some people get to a stage where it's like trying to straighten the tail of a dog. You just can't do it. Maybe as kids, that's the time when it can be changed.
We've just had a text in from Digna. She said, a spade should be called a spade. We can't pretend it's something else.
Yeah,
So that's saying I don't know, if you are from that ethnic origin, you should be able to be called that.
What, a spade?
Well, not a spade. I mean, I'm trying to use politically correct terms here, not saying.
Right? Yeah.
But I guess there's polite ways of saying things, and maybe that's what's better nowadays, because kids in the playground maybe wouldn't be using such words because hopefully their parents would have taught them that those words aren't appropriate to use.
Yeah, and being respectful, I think, is something that children should all learn, right? It creates a space in which people can have relationships, which I think is a great thing. But I'm still of the point of view that the power is in the hands of the person who refuses to take offence.
That seems like quite a hard attitude to teach a child, though.
Okay. All right, we have a caller. I think our first caller of the day, Durga Das ji. You're online. Please, welcome to the show. And hopefully you've got some wise words to contribute to this whole notion of taking and giving offence. Hello, Durga Das ji.
Hello, Durga Nandiya. Hello, how are you?
Good morning, Durga Nanji. Hanji, yes.
How are you?
Oh yes. Enjoyed your New Year.
Yes, it's very good.
Indeed, it was wonderful, and I think I successfully managed to offend only a small number of people this year. So,
but
what's your opinion on
I'm
this?
going to talk today about our, especially the Hindu society.
Mm-hmm.
We are become almost very stupid people, we Hindus. Almost every one of us is really very idiot, and we have become stupid.
Well, Durga Nanji, I think that's a wonderful contribution, calling every Hindu.
You know what is happening is that our temples funds are secularized by our so-called government.
Okay, this is in India, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us, we are even going to the extent of supporting them.
Well, that's actually a very relevant point, because if you think about it...
The thing is this, that I have here, what they say is that it started with this, our under Hindu religious Charitable Endowment Act of 1951.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Nehru Gandhi government, Congress government.
Yeah.
What they did, it is a downright robbery.
Okay.
You can get all the information from two sources. I'm not saying it myself. One is a book published in the United States, and the author is Stephen Knapp.
Oh yes, Stephen Knapp. He writes an awful lot of stuff, very good stuff at the moment.
And the other is a report also published in the U.S. by one forum for religious freedom.
Okay. Durganji, can I just take you back for one moment? Can I just take you back? You made a comment that you thought that Hindus and Indians have become stupid or a little ineffective, etc. Why do you think that? What do you think it is that has made them in the manner in which you look at them?
Whatever happened is in India is that they steal our money from our temples. They give it to the churches and mosques.
Okay.
And while our temples, they are closing down because they have not enough money to repair them. Because all this money has been siphoned off by these Andhra Pradesh, by the Christians.
So why is
it?
And
in Kerala by the communists. They are stealing our Hindu temples' lands, our properties.
If you bring
but do we know any Hindu taking any protest?
So, Durgananji, if you were to bring the situation back to this country here, what you're saying...
I will bring it the same this country. Now this newspaper or even the TV channels here, even in this country, we don't give any a fair deal. They always talk about Modi
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
and about the Muslim, but Hindus, thousands of Hindus were also killed by Muslims. But it all started with the Godhra. If they hadn't burnt about 52 women and children and men in the train in Godhra, nothing would have happened.
But Durganandji,
But
we've got...
have we any sympathy from anyone from those roasted alive by those people?
But Durganandji, I have to bring you back to the conversation, and that is about giving and receiving offence, right? And I think the point that you're trying to make, though, and this is something that we had also discovered, is that over the last decades, Hindus seem to have become very sensitive to not wanting to give offence. In that if somebody in India stands up and accuses a Hindu institution of something specifically to promote Hinduism, immediately they fall foul of, oh, we don't want to offend somebody who isn't a Hindu, and so they don't do it. And so I think that there is an element of not wanting to give offence at the heart of what you're saying. And I think it does make people less prone to stand up for themselves. Durganandji, thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much for your call. That actually raises a really interesting point that I was thinking about as well with the press and the media and how biased they are, is that to not cause offence to everyone, they term people as Asian. So
That's
instead of
true.
saying they're, Pakistani or Afghan or wherever they're from or Indian, they would just group everyone as one category. And Asian always
Asian.
covers China as well.
That's right.
But actually, it's not China and it's not India.
It is a strange one, that, because I remember thinking about this point and the troubles in Ireland, in the Northern Ireland problem, when there was a lot of terrorism, the IRA were very active. In those reports in the media, the BBC and others, they were even able to identify that a perpetrator was Irish, Protestant, Northern Irish, and which side of the roads that they used to live on. It was so easily identifiable. And yet, when it comes to, as you say, Prerna, a crime involving a person of a non-white skin, shall we say, then suddenly it's Asian, isn't it? Everyone isn't Asian.
I mean, this happened a lot with the grooming cases, which I found really frustrating, because every time
That's
I'd read
right.
something,
Yes.
it would just be Asian men.
Yes.
But it wasn't Asian men, but everyone was too scared to say who it really was.
Yeah, I remember only last week something was submitted to Parliament, I recall, where the Sikh community have issued a very, very strong statement saying we refuse to be included in this term, and we
I'm
insist...
glad they've said something.
Yeah, we insist that in future you do not lump us in with everybody else.
Maybe that's what Durganand was saying as well, how the
Yes.
Sikh community have done it, but the Hindu community never said, oh, we don't want to be associated with the term Asian and be categorised with everyone else.
That's right. It is a problem. And I think the downside of this whole debate is that when you start to get too sensitive, everyone becomes uncertain about what you can and can't say.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. I was, in a former incarnation, I was working in Houston. And the Americans have a very, very sensitive approach to interacting amongst cultural communities, different communities. And I was with a lot of research scientists, and they had a visiting delegation from China. And so I was doing a presentation to the board in this company, and past the boardroom, a group of the Chinese delegates walked past, and in my conversation with the directors, I just happened to make a flippant remark saying, I knew they were a little bit sensitive, saying, and it's so nice to see some of our yellow friends involved with the company.
Really?
And it was pin drop silence.
I can imagine.
And I think being sort of fairly well spoken with English, they managed to put it aside and say, well, it's just these Brits, these crazy Brits.
Things,
And so I did ask them, I said, so I'm sorry, have I said something inappropriate? And they said, oh, you can't use words to describe a person's skin. You have to call them Asian. And I said, hang on a minute.
Again.
I said, no, they're not Asians, they're Chinese. And they said, oh, you can't call them Chinese because they might take offence.
I think that's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with calling people the colour of their skin either. It's purely descriptive, right?
Yeah. So if somebody were to call you brown, or off-white,
Mediterranean
magnolia, or
bronze.
whatever,
Creamy, browny, beige.
that would be okay. I think it is. It's that point, isn't it, about taking offence.